Fast and Furious 10 Most Ridiculous and Over-the-Top Scenes. Fast and Furious transition from a street racing series to an action giant helped the franchise become a box office success. And its over-the-top, ridiculous scenes were a huge part of its journey. With Fast and Furious 11 set to be the final mainline movie, it will mark the end of an iconic saga that has produced plenty of memorable moments. Although future spin-offs will likely continue to provide the sort of wacky entertainment Fast and Furious has become synonymous with, it will be hard to replicate some of its wildest scenes that still live long in the memory. While the first film arguably set the tone for what was to come with its final street race being incredibly dramatic, things only continued to escalate with each installment. Fast and Furious 2009 is when the franchise really started to get more ambitious with its action sequences, sacrificing realism for drama, which proved to be effective. The saga's box office climbed with every new release until TFOTF, helping it become one of the highest-grossing movie series of all time, and Fast and Furious' most ridiculous stunts are a crucial reason why viewers kept coming back for more high-stakes fun. Furious 7 is easily one of the best Fast and Furious films ever made, and its over-the-top scenes certainly played a large part in making it so enjoyable. The film had a genuinely strong story with an emotional ending, but the action was non-stop, and its airdrop sequence still stands out. Dom's crew had carried out a plethora of daring stunts in the previous 6 movies, but driving cars out of an airborne plane is still one of their most ambitious moves yet. Watching vehicles fall through the air from thousands of feet up before deploying parachutes is every bit as crazy as it sounds, but there's no denying it was pure entertainment. The rapport and chemistry between the group adds some humor to such an intense scenario, and the fact that the creators really did drop cars from a plane 12,000 feet in the sky only adds to the legacy of such an insane stunt, making it one of Fast and Furious' most ridiculous moments of all time. In one of Fast 5's most action-packed scenes, Dom and Brian jump from a convertible into a lake after fleeing a train. With the duo captured by Reyes' henchmen, they stage an elaborate escape attempt that could have easily led to both of them meeting their demise. During Brian's fight with one of the goons in a flatbed truck, the vehicle goes steamrolling into the train, leaving Brian stranded hanging onto the frame of the car with nowhere to go. Luckily, Dom manages to fight his way to a vehicle located on the train and drives alongside Brian, who is forced to jump to the car just before it reaches a bridge. Despite nailing the landing, there was no more road left, prompting Dom to drive straight off towards the lake below, with both men jumping from the speeding vehicle. The exhilarating action is exactly why Fast and Furious has become so iconic, and this extreme sequence remains one of the franchise's most memorable. Hobbs holds back a helicopter through superhuman strength. Luke Hobbs has shown plenty of feats of strength throughout his time in Fast and Furious, including shattering his own cast by tensing his arm. However, holding back a helicopter with his sheer strength is up there with the franchise's most absurd moments. In Hobbs and Shaw, the protagonists have a car hooked to the villain's helicopter, which has captured Shaw's sister, resulting in a high-octane chase sequence between a whole host of characters. With the chain slipping off and risking the helicopter gaining freedom, Hobbs manages to hold on to it and prevents the villain from getting away, eventually leading to the chopper being grounded. With a solo Hobbs spin-off in the works, The Rock's character may continue to show off his inhuman power in the future, but his big moment in Hobbs and Shaw remains one of his wildest, and it won't be forgotten anytime soon. Brian dives from a falling bus to Letty's car. Having been one of the bravest characters in the entire franchise, Brian was no stranger to epic stunts during his time in the Fast and Furious movies, with his incredible bus run being among his best scenes. During Furious 7, Brian finds himself in combat with one of the villain's henchmen inside the back of a bus. Unfortunately, the driver becomes incapacitated, leading to the vehicle tipping and heading toward a cliff, which seems to be a certain death for the joint protagonist. As the bus hangs precariously on the edge, Brian is able to exit through the back and run along the vehicle, making a miraculous dive to Letty's car. Like the cargo drop incident, Furious 7's bus jump scene was filmed mostly authentically as a stunt double filled in for Walker, while the rest of the encounter was shot practically. Given it was one of the last major stunts Walker was involved in before tragically passing away, it makes the scene extra special, and Fast and Furious going all out on the over-the-top action feels fitting. Dom flies through the air to save Letty. Although most main characters within the saga get their heroic moments, very few have defied reality quite like Dom. While he alone has probably had around 10 ridiculous scenes in the franchise, soaring through the air to save Letty is still one of his most unrealistic. With the two characters on opposite bridges split with a deadly fall between them, Letty is launched from a tank after her side is damaged, causing her to be thrown into the air. Fortunately, Dom anticipates this, resulting in him climbing to the top of his own car and jumping, subsequently catching his significant other in the middle of the air before breaking his fall using another car. The moment is right up there with the car swing from F9, which is another honorable mention, and both defy reality. Still, the suspense and entertainment value are undeniable, and over-the-top saves like this are a huge reason why the franchise has grossed over $7 billion at the box office. Hobbs redirects a missile with his hands. With so many iconic moments, Hobbs has established himself as one of Fast and Furious' best characters despite not debuting until Fast 5. Each appearance helped him grow more and more useful to Dom's crew, which culminated in his unbelievable save in The Fate of the Furious. As the crew is being pursued while driving on icy terrain, a missile is launched their way, sliding across the ground as it aims to take out the central characters. Rather than simply avoiding the weapon, Hobbs demands Roman take the wheel as he hangs out the car, before pushing it towards an enemy vehicle. Most people would attempt to communicate with their team that the missile was en route and must be avoided at all costs, but Hobbs' decision sums up Fast and Furious. The characters love to play heroes, and with Hobbs successfully using Cypher's weapon against her own henchmen, the absurd scene is hard not to get a kick out of. Dom shatters the ground with a stomp. Luke Hobbs isn't the only character who has shown signs of superhuman strength, as Dom once shattered the ground with a single stomp. During his confrontation with Deckard Shaw in Furious 7, the duo has a fistfight on top of a parking garage with minimum dialogue in classic F&F fashion. After a missile is fired toward them, the ground starts to crack, leading to Dom stomping with force, causing the villain to fall through the garage after the floor shatters. His killer line beforehand only makes the scene feel even more ridiculous, as Dom tells Shaw, "The thing about street fights, the street always wins." It may be a little cheesy and force the audience to suspend belief, but that's all part of Fast and Furious charm. Naturally, it was the missile that did most of the destructive work, but the idea of one well-placed boot from Dom causing the whole garage to collapse screams over the top, making this scene truly unforgettable. The crew perform a vault heist with cars. Vault heists are a staple of the action and crime genres, but very rarely has a movie pulled off one of these using cars. Enter Fast 5. The fifth installment remains the most popular entry in the franchise, and this scene alone shows exactly why it's so well received. The creativity of having a vault filled with cash swinging around on the back of a car cannot be understated, and the crew's ability to evade the police and take down Reyes had audiences on the edge of their seats. It is still one of Dom and Brian's best missions together, and really allows the characters to flaunt their driving skills amid pure chaos. The reception to this scene may have cemented Fast and Furious' shift from street racing into a more traditional action series, but the heist alone helps prove why it was a great decision. The franchise has had few moments that topped Fast Five's crescendo, and what it lacks in realism, it more than makes up for in excitement. Even those not overly familiar with Fast and Furious may have heard of the famous skyscraper jump, as it remains one of the saga's most ambitious moments. Most people could only dream of owning some of the cars within the F&F franchise, especially if they were capable of jumping from one skyscraper to another. Incredibly, Dom and Brian were able to make their sports car do just that, even while avoiding being shot at by a grenade launcher. Brian's "cars don't fly" line helps set the scene, and watching the duo majestically soar through the sky before smashing through the glass of an adjacent building is the sort of action that has earned Fast and Furious such a strong reputation. While some viewers may be put off by the over-the-top nature of Furious 7's action sequences, those who are able to buy into them will likely have had a great time, making this classic moment one of the film's most recognizable stunts. While Fast and Furious has had no shortage of ridiculous moments, by far its most over-the-top has to be Tej and Roman going to space. Given how big the stakes have gotten over the years, some sort of space-based mission almost felt inevitable, but the way it was carried out is something that could only happen in Fast and Furious. Courtesy of a makeshift rocket car, Tej and Roman are able to launch themselves into orbit in order to stop Cypher from taking control of Ares. Picking the duo for this task offered a perfect blend of comedy and surrealism, as they are the last two characters audiences would expect to imitate astronauts. Their contribution absolutely makes this scene and proves they're worthy of their own Fast and Furious spin-off. However, even without them, sending a car to space in such fashion was always going to be hard for viewers to fathom, and it's difficult to see Fast and Furious topping this moment in the future.